At my sister's wedding, my dad laughed. Let's all thank the silent sponsor. Always generous, never invited. They burst out laughing. I took the mic, smiled, and said, funny, because that $22,800 reception bill just got voided. Bar tab 2. Then I turned to the groom. Good luck explaining that to 124 guests. You could hear the band stop mid-chord. I sat down and let the panic begin. The first time I realized I was nothing more than a wallet to my family was the day I got an invoice for a wedding I wasn't invited to. My sister's wedding. The email came from my mother. No greeting, no explanation, just a forwarded PDF from the venue with the subject line. Handle this. $22,856 for the reception. Due in full within 10 days. My name was listed on the billing address. I sat there staring at it, then checked my messages, thinking maybe someone had sent the wrong thing. Nothing. No invite, no mention of the wedding date, no acknowledgement I existed except as a payment method. It should have made me furious, but honestly, I wasn't surprised. That's what happens when you work your way into six figures and don't set boundaries. First, it's just little things. Mom needs help with groceries. Dad's truck breaks down. Then it's tuition. Then it's rent. Then it's somehow an expectation. And the second you hesitate, you're the bad guy. I paid it quietly like I always did. But this time I made a note of the due date, the venue name, the catering company, everything, and I waited. They didn't know I was coming. I showed up in a rented suit, unannounced, and sat in the back near the kitchen at a table full of distant cousins and plus ones who had been shuffled to the outer edges. Nobody even noticed me. Not my parents, not my sister, not even my brother, who ironically borrowed money from me last month to get his startup off the ground. The ceremony was exactly what I expected. Overproduced, painfully sentimental, and full of vague talk about family values. The groom cried during his vows. My sister wore a designer gown I knew the price tag on because I paid for the alterations. My dad shook hands like a senator. My mom floated around like she ran the place. Dinner came and went. Toast started. They had a whole lineup. Bridesmaids, best man, both parents. My father was the last one. He stood up already tipsy, drink in hand, and tapped the mic like he was about to deliver the punchline of the century. Let's all thank the silent sponsor. Always generous, never invited. Laughter exploded. Real belly laughs. The kind that make people slap tables. My mother giggled behind her napkin. The groom clapped. My sister actually stood up and did a mock curtsy like she was accepting an award. That was when I got up. I didn't rush. Just walked up the side of the room like I was headed to the restroom and veered off toward the mic. My father stepped back, still chuckling, and handed it to me like this was part of the entertainment. I looked out over the crowd. All these people dressed like royalty, eating food I paid for in a room I funded, drinking champagne I never even got offered. I smiled. Funny thing, I said, that $22,856 reception bill just got voided. Bar tab 2. The room didn't go silent. Collapsed. The band stopped playing in the middle of a jazzy filler tune. People froze with drinks halfway to their mouths. My sister just stared. I looked at the groom. Good luck explaining that to 124 guests. Then I handed the mic back, walked to my table, sat down, and picked up my fork and just started eating. No one moved. The laughter was gone. The air had changed. Let them scramble. First, no one really believed what I said. They thought it was a joke. Some people even laughed a little, nervously, like I was doing some weird bit. Then the DJ killed the music. It was subtle, just a quiet fade of background jazz cutting out mid-note. But that was all it took. The laughter stopped like a switch flipped. Heads turned. You could feel this low wave of confusion crawl across the room. And then my dad, still holding his whiskey, looked at me with this frozen half-smile like he was waiting for a punchline. My mom's mouth was slightly open, stuck in the beginning of some polite laugh she hadn't finished. The groom was the first to crack. He stepped up to the mic, trying to play damage control. Everyone, hey, it's fine. Just a little misunderstanding, he said, waving one hand toward me. Open bars still going strong, right? Let's keep it going. He leaned slightly toward me, trying to talk low so the guests wouldn't hear. You're bluffing. You wouldn't actually do that. I didn't say anything, just watched him. I could tell the exact second it hit him that I wasn't bluffing. His expression didn't even change. He just froze. That little flicker in his eyes gave it away. Like he just remembered all the invoices they never paid because they assumed I would. He turned around fast and whispered something to my sister. Her face dropped instantly. Her hands flew to her head and she turned toward our parents. Now the real whispering started. A few guests started gathering their things. One of the groomsmen walked over to the bar and came back empty-handed. The bartender had stopped pouring. My mom rushed over to me, cheeks flushed. Nolan, what is going on? She hissed. You know exactly what's going on. You can't just cancel a wedding like that. You should have thought about that before turning me into your little secret ATM and laughing about it in front of 100 people. She looked around, panicking like someone was filming. She leaned in closer. You're embarrassing the family. I just picked up my drink. No, you embarrassed the family. I just turned the lights on. The venue manager came up to the mic next. Calm, professional. Due to a breach of payment terms, all contracted services are now suspended. We'll be shutting down the event in the next 20 minutes. And just like that, the illusion shattered. No more drinks, no more food, no more polite small talk. People started heading for the exits. Some were just annoyed. Others were curious, asking what happened. A few looked at me like I'd committed some kind of crime, but a surprising number nodded. One older woman I didn't recognize actually patted me on the shoulder and said, "Good for you." My sister was crying now. Not the soft, emotional kind either. Full-on meltdown. Her makeup was running and her new husband was standing next to her. Red-faced, whispering something she clearly didn't want to hear. My brother came over, arms crossed, looking like he wanted to punch someone, but wasn't sure who. You couldn't just be normal for one day. I didn't even look up from my plate. This is me being normal. You guys are just not used to consequences. He stared at me for a long second like he expected me to apologize, then turned and walked off, muttering something under his breath. People were now being told to leave. The staff started clearing dishes. The DJ was already packing up his cables. One of the venue coordinators was talking to my mom, who was frantically pointing at me like she was trying to get me thrown out, even though I technically owned the damn party. And I just sat there eating a plate of cold food while the wedding fell apart around me like a sandcastle in high tide. They told everyone to leave, literally stood at the doors and asked the guests to go home. I watched my mom cry while doing it, not because she was sad, because she was embarrassed. She kept saying, "This isn't how this was supposed to go," like she was the director of some show that I ruined by refusing to stay behind the curtain. The groom's family was furious. His mother gave mine this look like you people are insane and left without saying a word. The father tried to talk to someone from the venue staff about how to pay whatever's left, but they just shook their heads and said, "There's nothing on the books. It's all gone." By the time I left, there were maybe 20 people still there. Most of them standing around in small groups trying to figure out if this was fixable. It wasn't. The cake wasn't cut. The first dance never happened. The staff boxed up whatever food was left, dropped it in the kitchen and left. The venue was dark and half clean by the time I stood up and walked out. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. 2 days of silence. Then the storm hit. It started with texts. Angry, emotional, rapid-fire once. My mom, "You humiliated your sister on the most important day of her life." My dad, "You made your family look like beggars." My brother, "You're mentally unwell and you need help." Who does this to their own blood? I didn't answer, so they escalated. Calls, missed calls, voicemails, all variations of the same message. That I'd gone too far, that I'd made my point, and now it was time to fix it. They wanted to meet as a family, wanted to talk things through. They said the venue would still take the date if we acted fast. And you're the only one who can make this right. Still, I didn't respond. Then came the neighbors. Apparently, my parents started telling people I had a breakdown. They were doing damage control, acting like I was just stressed or sick or not myself lately. But word spread fast about what really happened. A few people even messaged me directly. One guy I barely knew from high school said, "Heard what happened at your sister's wedding. Honestly, respect." That told me everything. The narrative was slipping out of their hands and they hated it. My family only ever cared about appearances. That was the true disaster for them. Not the money, not even the ruined night. It was the fact that people were talking. They couldn't spin it fast enough. For days they stopped pretending to be calm. My dad left me a voicemail threatening to get a lawyer involved. He said, "I sabotaged a contracted event that I humiliated the family intentionally." He said, "People are questioning your stability," like he was trying to build a case for some made-up legal claim. My brother texted me, "You think this makes you powerful? It just proves you're alone." Maybe he was right, but I finally felt like myself. The best part was my mom still trying to guilt me. She said, "We've raised you. We loved you. This isn't the son we know." That one actually made me laugh. I couldn't remember the last time anyone in that house said anything to me that didn't involve me paying for something. I didn't block them. I wanted them to see I was reading every message and choosing not to answer. By the end of the week, I was searching for apartments in another state. I didn't tell anyone, not a friend, not a coworker, not even my landlord. I just started checking leases and job listings, quietly deciding if I could rebuild somewhere where no one would look at me and see a walking credit card. The only person I responded to was the venue manager. I wrote, "Thank you for having my back." She replied, "People don't forget what we saw. You were right." By the second week, they stopped pretending they just wanted to talk. Now it was war. They came to my apartment. Not all at once. That would have required coordination. First, it was my brother banging on the door like a debt collector. I didn't answer. Then my dad showed up, just stood out front, leaning against his car, calling me over and over until I put my phone in the freezer for an hour just to pretend it didn't exist. Later that evening, my mom came by. She buzzed my unit 8 times before someone else let her in. She stood at my door, voice cracking through the wood. "You're killing us, Nolan. You're killing this family." That's when I realized they weren't going to stop. Not because they wanted to make things right, but because they couldn't live without control. And right now, they had none. They wanted the wedding rescheduled, wanted the money reinstated, wanted the story rewritten so they didn't look like fools in front of the community. They kept saying the same thing in different ways. Do the right thing and this all goes away. But here's the thing about people who only care about appearances. They're terrified of silence. So I gave them exactly that. No replies, no answers, just space. Endless hollow space. And in that space, they unraveled. I started getting calls from people I hadn't heard from in years. A cousin who never invited me to anything messaged me saying he was checking in and thinking about the family. A woman I dated briefly 2 years ago suddenly wanted to know if I was okay. Even an old church friend reached out to say pray for clarity. It was coordinated. They were sending in others trying to breach the wall from another angle. That's when I got the email. It was from the groom. Subject line, "You win. Hope it was worth it." It was 3 paragraphs of anger disguised as self-righteousness. He said I traumatized my sister. Said I'd set the tone for the kind of man I really am. Said he hoped I never need this family again. I read it twice. Then I replied with one line. "If you want another wedding, pay for it yourself." He didn't respond. A few days later, I saw a post go up from my sister's Instagram. A long dramatic caption under a black and white photo of her and the groom sitting on the floor in their wedding clothes, holding hands like survivors of a tragedy. The caption talked about forgiveness, grace, and rising above betrayal. She didn't tag me, but the subtext was obvious. The comments were a mix of people praising her strength and others, quietly, indirectly, pointing out that maybe this was what happens when you take advantage of the wrong person. Then I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my dad again, but this time he didn't sound angry, just tired. He said they'd spoken to a lawyer. Said I might be liable for damages if it's proven I acted with malice. Said he didn't want to go down that road, but that I left them no choice. I saved the voicemail, then I emailed my attorney. I didn't want to fight them in court, but I wasn't afraid of it either. Let them try. Receipts, emails, screenshots, bank records, contracts. I never signed. A judge look at those and decide who was the villain, and in the meantime, I kept looking for jobs. Out of state, out of reach. The best revenge was no longer about payback. It was about building something they couldn't touch. When I finally left, I didn't tell anyone. I just packed up what I needed, hired a long-haul moving service, and locked the apartment behind me. The rest, furniture, dishes, the TV, I left for donation. I didn't want to take anything that had been part of that life. The job offer out west came through right on time. Remote, higher pay, no state tax. I signed the lease on a one-bedroom overlooking the edge of the mountains and paid the first 6 months up front. Nobody helped me move. I didn't ask. I didn't want anyone knowing where I was going. The last thing I did before I left town was stop by a quiet cafe I used to visit back when I still believed my family was proud of me. I ordered a coffee, sat in the corner, and opened my laptop. I had one final task. Over the last 2 weeks, I'd compiled everything. Screenshots, emails, forwarded messages, the invoice from the venue with my name on it, the handle this message from my mom, a photo of my sister in the dress I paid for, the guest list I was never on, and finally the groom's email, bitter and smug, pretending I'd won something. I wrote out the truth. Plain, measured, unapologetic. No dramatic language, no insults, just facts. How I'd supported every one of them quietly for years. Paid bills, covered emergencies, bought groceries, tuition, rent, all while they treated me like a backup plan until the wedding when they turned that silence into a joke. At the bottom, I wrote one line. I paid for everything and wasn't invited. Then I was mocked for it. I responded by leaving. You can decide who was wrong. I blind copied the list carefully. Neighbors, a few extended family members, some church folks, a handful of people I knew my parents would never expect, people they had lied to, people they leaned on after the disaster, telling stories about how I'd lost my mind, how I ruined my sister's big day for attention. Then I attached the files, every single one, and hit send. It wasn't revenge. Not really. I didn't expect sympathy and I didn't want it. It was just the truth. Quiet, documented, undeniable. After that, I shut down the email account, deleted every message from my phone, and walked out of the cafe. When my family realized I was gone, it must have hit them like cold water. They couldn't call. I changed my number. Couldn't come to the door. I wasn't there anymore. Couldn't guilt trip me through mutual friends. I wasn't talking to any of them. I'd removed myself from every digital trace of that place. Gone like I'd been erased. But the message that stayed behind. They wouldn't be able to talk it down. Not this time. I made sure of that. Later that night, I stood in my new apartment surrounded by boxes and quiet and realized something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. They couldn't touch me now. Not with guilt. Not with obligation. Not even with shame. They could rant, spin stories, cry to their friends. But I'd already told the truth, and the people who mattered had read it. There were no more apologies to make, no more favors to give, no more wedding to save. 3 weeks passed like they were stolen. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread. No unread texts at 2 a.m. No emails with urgent subject lines like, "Need help again. Quick favor." Or, "Call me ASAP." My phone stayed mostly silent. My days stretched out without apology. Even walking into a grocery store felt lighter. I kept waiting for the old panic to come back. That voice that says, "You'll regret this. They need you. You're alone now." But it didn't. Then out of nowhere, the message came. It was a Sunday morning. Bright, cold air, mountain light through the blinds. I was halfway through a book I hadn't been able to finish for 2 years when I got a ping from my new email. The one nobody had except a few work contacts and a friend from college. Subject, "Please, send her my sister." I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. It wasn't long, just a few quiet lines. No drama, no guilt, just honesty. Something we hadn't traded in for a long time. She said she didn't know the full extent of what I'd done for the family, that she always assumed I was just doing well and happy to help. That she never really asked why I wasn't smiling anymore at birthdays or why I stopped coming to Christmas dinner. She said it wasn't until everything collapsed, until the silence fell, that she realized how badly they treated me. She wrote, "I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to say I understand now. Not everything, but more than I used to. And if you ever decide to talk again, I'll be here." I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and didn't touch it for the rest of the day because I wasn't angry. Not anymore. What I felt was something quieter, heavier. Like walking through the wreckage of a house you used to live in and finding one room untouched. Still standing. Still waiting. But I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish her. I just didn't want to go back. Not even for her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. People think the hardest part of breaking away is the fallout, the shouting, the drama, the tears. But that's not it. The hardest part is after all of that, when things go quiet and you still don't go back. When you finally understand that being needed isn't the same as being loved. A few days later, I saw a mutual friend post something vague about family being complicated. No names, but I knew who it was aimed at. Probably someone from the old town trying to fish for sympathy. I didn't comment. I deleted the app. I've made a rule for myself now. If it reminds me of who I was when I was their wallet, it doesn't belong in my life anymore. I still think about replying to her sometimes. Not to reconnect, just to tell her I appreciate what she said. Maybe I will someday. But the truth is I've already had my closure. It wasn't in the message. It wasn't in the move. It wasn't even in the chaos I left behind. It was in the silence that followed. The kind where no one is asking you to prove your worth anymore. I didn't burn the bridge. I walked away and watched it collapse behind me on its own, and I never looked back. Yep, Pate. I was the silent sponsor at my sister's wedding. I pulled the plug mid-reception. 3 weeks later, here's what happened. Hey Reddit, it's Nolan again. If you saw my original story, yeah, the one where I paid for my sister's entire wedding, wasn't invited, got publicly mocked, and then canceled the whole thing in front of 124 guests. Here's the follow-up a few of you asked for. It's been just over 3 weeks. I figured the dust would have settled by now. I was wrong. 1, I got sued. Sort of. Well, threatened officially. My parents somehow scraped together enough money for a lawyer, or at least enough for someone to write a nasty Candace letter. It was thin. Something about defamation, intentional disruption of contractual agreements, and my favorite, emotional damages. It was laughable. I didn't defame anyone. I sent the truth with receipts. My lawyer, a former classmate who I helped with rent 3 years ago, irony, took one look and said, "Tell them good luck in small claims court." Haven't heard anything since. 2, my sister moved out. Surprise, my sister left the groom. Apparently, the fallout from the wedding exposed more than family dysfunction. Rumor from a mutual contact is that the groom told her the day after the wedding, "You should have controlled your brother better." That plus the pressure from his family, who thought she was a financial liability, was too much. She moved back in with a friend from college. We haven't spoken. I haven't replied to her last email, but I'm thinking about it. 3, my dad's reputation took a hit. Back home, my dad's always been the respected guy. Ran committees, coach teams, that sort of thing. Turns out when people found out the full story, the forwarded invoice, the speech he gave, the fact I was never invited, things shifted. A lot of people didn't say anything to his face. But I heard through someone he was disinvited from a community leadership role he'd held for years. He blames me, of course, but all I did was let people see who he really was. For I got a job offer I didn't expect. Total curveball. I got a call from someone I barely knew in my industry. They'd read the story after it made the rounds, no idea how. Maybe LinkedIn or Reddit screenshots, and said, "That was bold. You've got backbone. We need someone like that." They offered me a senior role, more money, fully remote. I accepted. Somehow, standing up for myself landed me a better life. Go figure. 5. And finally, I got a letter in the mail. Old school. Handwritten. No return address. It just said, "You were right. I hope you're doing better. I'm trying to learn." No name, just that. I have a feeling I know who it was from. Anyway, that's the update. No dramatic endings, just growth, distance, peace, and a few people left behind who now have to sit with themselves a little longer than they're comfortable with. I'm not going back, but I'm not bitter either. Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you'll ever say. Thanks for listening.